Hey everybody, it's Carl again. Just wanted to go ahead and share today's tip with you. Thank you for tuning in and sharing this series with the people and commenting and emailing me and all the things that you've been doing. I really appreciate all the comments that you've been giving me. It really is helpful to know that this has been helpful for you. And today's tip, I think, is going to be no different. Tip number 8 of the 23 best home buying tips I've learned in 23 years, tip number 8 is to avoid pre and post possession agreements. Avoid pre and post possession agreements. So what is a pre-possession or post possession agreement, and why should you avoid it? When you think about it, a pre-possession or a post-possession agreement is an agreement that you make with the seller in order for them to either allow you to move in prior to the close of escrow, which is a pre-close, right, a pre-possession agreement, or something for them, the sellers, to stay in the property after the close of escrow. And in that case, that's called a post-possession agreement, right? Pre is for the buyer, post is for the seller to remain in the property after or before the close of escrow. Now, as you can imagine, this can cause several problems right away. And even if you've been in real estate for a minute or two, I think you could probably pick out a few things that could be problematic in this situation. I wrote down there 3 major risks that I see with this, and tell me what you think. I wrote down point number 1, damages to the property. Damages to the property. You know, the question's going to come up if there's something that's damaged in the wall or the electrics don't work or whatever. The question's going to come up, when did the damage occur and who did it? I mean, that's going to be the first question, right? Who was responsible for? How did that happen? And when did it occur, right? And then who's responsible for those repairs? Right? I mean, who's responsible to ultimately get that done? Is it the seller? Is it the buyer? And then I wrote down, who does the repair? Is it your Uncle Bubba? Is it my brother? I'm going to give him a 6-pack of beer and he's going to fix the plumbing? I mean, what is it? What's going to happen? Right? Who does that repair? Point number 2, I wrote down, don't forget liability. Don't forget liability. I mean, who's responsible for injuries? Or insurance. I mean, if you're going to do a pre-possession agreement, you're a buyer moving in, or you're a buyer allowing a seller to stay in afterwards, let's say a post-possession agreement, what happens if they fall down and break their hip or something? I mean, who's responsible for that? I wrote down, it may be written, but written doesn't mean no court. I mean, I've been around the block a couple times. I'm 49 years old, and let me tell you, all right, you do not want to go to court if you're looking for justice. Okay, I wrote down utilities, insurance, all of these things have to be considered. If you're even considering a pre-possession or a post-possession agreement, utilities, insurance, all of these things have to be considered. I wrote down point number 3, failure to perform. Now look, I'm not an attorney and I can't give you legal advice, okay? But what I can tell you is that if the seller doesn't close, or if the buyer doesn't close, or there's something wrong with their credit, or something comes up at the last minute, they go out and they buy a couch at the last minute and all of a sudden they can't qualify because their income to debt ratio is screwed up. I mean, how many extensions are you willing to allow the buyer to have? How many times are you willing the seller to stay in if they can't move out because they enjoy the house too much? When do they move out? I mean, when the moving van shows up, I mean, when you've got all your things together and your family's already discombobulated, I mean, that's not going to work for anybody. I wrote down, who makes who move? You know, both parties are going to have a lot of interest. Tensions are going to be super high. I mean, the seller's got a lot of time, money, and energy wrapped up in the property. The buyer, you're going to have a lot of energy, money, and you've already moved out of your property, you know, your rental property or wherever it is you're coming from. Look, my best advice to you here, tip number 8, just avoid the whole thing. Don't do pre or post-possession agreements. If you've got any experience in this, I'd love to hear your horror stories in the comments. And until next time, have a powerful sales day.